and this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio! The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host. Its programs and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates.
As the cosmic order, she is a conduit to the powers that be to answer your questions about your future self, past lives, current career, love. She shines light into the darkness to illuminate what was, what may be, and beyond. The readings and advice given by Barbara Jean Lindsey are for entertainment purposes only, should not take the place of any medical, legal, or financial advice given by a qualified professional, and are not a substitute for medical, legal, or financial advice. If you need a doctor, call a doctor. If you need to be expanded, call the cosmic oracle. Not take the place of any medical, legal, or financial advice given by a qualified professional and are not a substitute for medical, legal, or financial advice. If you need a doctor, call a doctor. If you need to be expanded, call the cosmic oracle.
Hello, let's try this again. This is your host, Barbara Jean Lindsey. It is Friday, November 16th, 2018, and I'm coming to you live from the Sacramento, California area. Yes, I've moved again from Southern California, and now you'll be catching the show every Friday night live here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from the Sacramento area. And I'm just really excited for tonight. We're kind of multi-dimensional today, and so that's why you're hearing like all sorts of feedback there. And so now we've kind of grounded everything, and I'm really happy to have an amazing lady on our show today that I met at Stargate to the Cosmos. Finally, I had listened to a lot of her videos on YouTube, but had never met her personally. And so it was really an honor and a pleasure to meet Penny Bradley at the Stargate to the Cosmos conference. And before we get started with that, I do want to thank you, all of the listeners, for supporting us here at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We still are the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world, and we're here only thanks to your generosity. So continue to give your support. We really appreciate it. We've raised $1,819 this month. We still need $2,850 to get us going, to pay the bills and keep the lights on. And if you want to go ahead and make a $5.99 a month contribution to archives, then it's really a cool thing. It's a good value for your money, because for $5.99 a month, you get to have a unconditional review of all of the shows here, over 50 shows here on Revolution Radio that you can have at your fingertips. So if you miss a show here, you can always go ahead and re-listen to them at your convenience. So we're going to get started with our wonderful lady that I'm really happy to have here, and that is Penny Bradley. And I'm also going to be showing this. I'm going to be going live now on our Facebook page as well. So I want to welcome all of our Facebook page participants on Facebook live to the Cosmic Oracle Show. And we do have our guest today, Penny Bradley. I will be calling her and getting her on the phone as soon as possible. But before I do, I want to give you a little bit of a breakdown on why I'm really excited to have her here. Penny Bradley is like a whistleblower, okay? She's like kind of a big deal. And if you meet her, she's just kind and loving and sweet. And I love it because she just tells you straight up and like it is. And so she is a military laboratory created hybrid, and she's going to talk about that. She was born in 1955, and she was kidnapped in 1959 from her bed and taken to Langley for mind fracture and weaponization of her psi abilities. Part of that was a tour in the time tunnel at Montauk. In 1964, Penny Bradley was taken to Mars through the New York jump gate, and she spent 25 years on Mars in a school and as a fighter pilot in the war with the native green reptilians and the mantids. In 1990, she was transferred to Dark Fleet, where she was a navigator in a freighter for about 25 years. In 2014, she was age regressed, mind wiped, and time traveled back to where she was taken from. She no longer knew her family and had lots of programmed alters. In the lifetime since she was returned, she studied mathematics, computers, and microbiology. She was married and had 3 children, and they're all now grown, and there have been obvious blockages in her life path. Her age regression sickness started in 1981, and she was still able to work most of the time until 2001, when arsenic poisoning floored her. She struggled to regain her health and was working full-time again in 2004. A work injury made her paralyzed from the waist down in 2009, and she came back enough that she could walk and take care of herself. She started recovering memories and reintegrating alters in 2013. Now, she's collected most of her interviews, and they're publicly available to playlists on her YouTube channel. That way, the original interviewer still gets the credit if they are monetized. So you can go to YouTube youtube.com/user/PENNIWINKLEB. And there are a few of her videos there. And some have been translated into Russian and was done in English-German format. So we're going to be bringing Penny on now, and she is going to close down. We were talking earlier, so I'm going to give her a call right now. And we'll get her on the show. I'm just really excited to have her. I sound like a kid at Christmas, right? Well, that's kind of what I'm feeling like right now. So here we go. So I'm going to give Penny a call, and hopefully we'll get her on. Okay. So let's look at this, and we're going to call her now. We're going to add Penny Bradley to the show. Here we go. And we're going to add her. So this should start to call her, hopefully. And hopefully she'll answer, and we'll be on. Hi, Penny.
Hi.
Yay, we got it. We did it.
That turns out really well.
Well, I've just introduced you already. I wasn't sure if you were able to hear that at all. But I just kind of took your bio from Stargate to the Cosmos conference. And so we're just really glad to have you here. And so I'd like to kind of start, I know there's a lot going on. So I wanted to ask you, do you want to just jump off from right where we are now because where you started from the beginning, let's say 2013, or if you want to start before that and move up, or do you want to just take it, where are we right now in the secret space program?
I just got kicked off and just got back, so.
Okay.
Well,
so I thought what we would start with is let's start in present time. Today, if I'm asking you, Penny Bradley, where are we in the Secret Service program? You like that? The Secret Space program. Maybe you could tell our listeners, what is the Secret Space program? And we'll kind of start there as a jumping off point. Does that sound good to you?
Okay. The Secret Space programs is more accurate. You got to put an S on it.
That's good to know.
There are probably 8 major ones and hundreds, if not thousands, of minor ones. And the major ones that Americans and English-speaking people need to worry about are the German project, which started in the 1930s, and Solar Warden, which started in about 1980. I don't have exact dates for things. It's kind of, when did they come into my awareness? The German program is basically in charge in space. They were the first ones out there, and they have the best tech, and they kind of laid territorial markers all over the place. And that was what I served in. And the Americans lost World War II to the Germans in Antarctica, not the Germans in Germany. The Battle of Operation High Jump was a decisive victory for Antarctica, and they followed it up by buzzing the White House with Hannibal. And that let Eisenhower know 5 years later who was really boss. And so Eisenhower basically put the CIA in charge of all of it, which was a big mistake for regular folks. The CIA have absolutely no morals, no ethics, and no qualms about torturing children. And so all of these programs in space are manned by kidnapped little kids, except for the U.S. Air Force has a program in Earth orbit that's basically a Coast Guard. Those guys volunteered. And the U.S. Marine Corps has a special unit that serves in space. And they weren't exactly volunteers, but they were never mind fractured. So they're the exceptions. The third major player in space, those who have come back from it call it planetary corporations. And it's the cabal in space. Well, along the way, the guys at the CIA who were doing the mind fracturing decided to start their own mercenary companies, and they disagreed over the use of black goo in assets. And so they formed 2 competing companies, and they're known in the super soldier community as Monarch and Kruger. Are you talking?
I'm listening. I'm
okay. I'm hearing a beep, and I didn't know what it was.
Oh no, I don't know what that is. I'm just taking in the information, and I'm learning, and I'm open to listening. I know that the listeners here on Facebook are, and the listeners on Revolution Radio, because what you have to say is it's difficult for people to hear, but it's necessary so that we can have the information and then be able from that to discern it and then hopefully take some right action.
I think the right action is shutting down the kidnapping of small children.
Okay, let's go right to that.
Because that is the major Earth-based atrocity. All of these programs that I've described are all manned by little kids that have been kidnapped and mind fractured. And there's nothing we do out there that cannot be done by consenting adults. The mind fracture is done in order to cover up the crimes that they're committing.
Can you first back up a little bit and tell us, let's say if there is a child, let's say before their 4-year-old, or is there a time that they want to get them? And how does this all work? Because, it's for someone who's in the third dimension here and first hearing it, can we start maybe from there of how it actually, the system works according to your own experience?
Okay, they've modified it a couple of times over the decades.
Okay.
So I will give my experience because that's worst case scenario.
Okay. And then
they've made it gentler over time, but the end result ends up the same.
Okay.
In 1955, when I was born, they had already worked on my parents and my grandparents. So it had already been in business for a while. They had already identified us as a target family with genetic-based psychic abilities. That's what they were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And they had discovered that normal humans cannot survive around Draco. And the Germans had an alliance with the Draco. So...
And can you tell us what the Draco are, Penny, for those that are just hearing this for the first time?
Draco are an empire in this arm of the galaxy that is ruled by a reptilian race. And these reptilians run 14, 15 feet tall. They have short wings. They used to be able to fly. Most of them can't now. Some of them have short tails. They are descended from dragons and still have that attitude. But they're about 3 times as big as we are, and they're fiercely telepathic, and they give off an energy that the energy will kill you, and it's not anything that they're intending to do. So because of this alliance between the Germans and the Draco, they needed humans that could work with them. It was a basic practical need. So they took a whole generation of these kids, and I was one of them, and injected us with Draco DNA before we were born. Most of us didn't make it. The ones that did, there was a combination. Usually it was an O blood type where the mother was a Rh negative and the child was Rh positive. That was the pairing that was most likely to live. There were others that lived, but that was the combination that was most likely to live. And this was before the RhoGAM shots. So having an Rh positive child live from an Rh negative mother was a miracle to begin with.
Yeah.
So they were pushing their luck. But my mom was Rh negative, and she had 5 of us that lived. She had a 6th one that didn't. So she did pretty well, I guess.
And as a family, are all your brothers and sisters, are they aware of this sort of programming that you become aware of as well?
They're not. They have no memories. And because they have no memories, they think I'm crazy.
Yeah, but we know, right? You know what you know, and the truth is the truth. And so maybe sometimes by you standing up, like the courage you have to talk about this today, will eventually, like chip away for them to come forward, hopefully, or to find some healing. Or
well, I'm hoping that I'm wrong and that they were spared.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I hope so too.
My memories were activated by an NSA agent in 2013, and I still don't know his motive for doing it. But it was obvious, looking back on it, it was obviously an assignment he had. It wasn't his personal choice. So,
say NSA, what does that stand for?
National Security Administration. They used to be called no such agency.
That makes sense.
They're the partner agency with the CIA. So one was supposed to be for foreigners and one was supposed to be for Americans. And along the way, they've both gotten their territories crossed. They're both doing both. But they even share the same database now, the one in Ogden. So, but what happened with me was I was born. I had a couple of small birth defects that were not real crippling. I have deformed feet, and it makes it hard to walk. But other than that, it's not too bad. When I was 4, they came and got me. I don't know how. I mean, I was 4. I don't know how they got into the house without waking anybody up. But they got me, and they took me in a Jeep cross country because I was in the San Joaquin Valley in Tulare County. You know, we were dirt farmers, and my dad was an employee, and we had a trailer house we were living in. And they got into the trailer house and they got me. And so they drove me across country in a Jeep. Part of the way it was in tunnels and part of the way it was at night on the interstate system. And I ended up at the CIA base in Langley, Virginia. They kept me in a basement level. And everything was white walls, white floors, white uniforms on the employees, even a white lab coat on the ETs that worked there, and there were plenty of those. I was kept in a tiny cell. I mean, I was 4, and the bed was barely bigger than I was, and there was just room for a bed and a toilet and a sink. I didn't even have a mirror. And they shaved my head and they kept me in white cotton pajamas the whole time I was there.
And your parents did know where you were, or how did they handle it with the parents?
They handled the thing with the parents by using time travel.
Yeah.
Whenever it was all done,
Yeah.
they age regressed me and time traveled me back home. And my understanding is that the target range is within 15 minutes of when they took you. But they didn't put me in my bed because I remember because I started kindergarten that fall. And I remember telling the teacher that Martians had left me on the footstep. That didn't play well in 1959, let me clue you. But
my heart goes out to you. I'm a compassionate person, so my heart just goes out to you. There's something like really wrong here, Penny.
It's really wrong because they modified me. They think I'm their property, like a tank or a truck.
Mm-hmm.
They do not consider me a human being at all. And it's been tough trying to deal with spiritual people who think that I have free will when the people who think they own me do not believe I have free will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my reality is very different from the normal human being on the planet.
Mm-hmm. But from what I understand, there's maybe millions of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know that they were taking 150,000 Americans every year to serve in just the German fleet. So that's been since 1954 that they've been taking 150,000 Americans. That doesn't count everybody else. And that doesn't count all the other agencies out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's just to the Germans. The last estimate that I had was 8 million Americans turn up missing every year. And 800,000 children are missing from the UK every year. And those are the ones that are not brought back. Mm-hmm. So you have to wonder what happened to them. This is the numbers involved are outrageous. And
they're staggering. They're shocking and staggering. I mean, the whole thing is like you're opening Pandoras Box here, and it's open, and we're not going to go back. We're going to go forward with this.
Yeah, it has to go forward. Pardon my cussing, but this shit has to be stopped.
No, I'm with you. I'm sure all of our listeners here are right with you. But at first, you're bringing in awareness. You can't fix it if you don't know it exists, right? So now we have to just bring it out. And it's kind of up there with the pedophile rings, and no one wants to hear that. And most of us couldn't deal with it. You know, it's so beyond anything that we could think of. It's so dastardly,
This is a continuum that the pedophile rings are on one end and we're on the other end. Okay. It's all the same thing. That all the kids are being kidnapped and used for various things. The ones that can make the grade to go into space do. The ones that can't end up sex slaves, regular slaves. They use slaves in space. And the ones that die along the way, they use them to produce adrenochrome. Mm-hmm. This is a continuum. There are millions of kids gone every year, and not all of them end up in space. Most of them end up dead.
After abuse.
After serious abuse that would go into the category of torture.
Can you talk a little bit, if you feel up to that, about what they did to you as an example of, this is just one example of what can be going on to these 8 million American children missing?
When I was 4, the first thing they did was mind fracture. The idea is to torture a child so its mind makes a bubble to store the trauma. And it needs to be a thick enough bubble that it doesn't share memory. And it has to be a child, because adults will go catatonic instead of forming an altar. This bubble becomes an altar whenever it's trained. And their goal is for each person, each child, to form 2,200 altars.
Oh my God.
So they have a set of things that they do to kids. And they'll use a torture until the child stops reacting to it. And then they'll go to the next one on the list. They start with drowning, or at least they did with me, because the regeneration tank that they use to bring you back from the dead, you have to breathe the fluid they dump you in. Mm-hmm. And that's an ET tech that we lease. We don't own.
No, but we have access to that.
It brings you back into your own natural body. So you're not a clone. You haven't gone anywhere. You're still you. You're still there with your own soul and your own mind, except now your mind's fractured. And I've woke up inside them so many times it would make your head spin. But the first thing they did was they drowned me. And I was a 4-year-old kid, and I was small for my age, and I was about 3 feet tall and about 40 pounds. And they just dunked my head into a bathtub. It wasn't any big ceremony to it. They just grabbed me and put me in it. And when I started breathing the water and drowned, I woke up in the regen tank. The tank is about 2 meters across. It's a cylinder. It's about 3 meters high, and it has a computer panel on the outside with a little slot that they put a tissue sample or a blood sample in there so that they have a DNA link to repair the body. So they bring the body back to whatever the DNA says it should be. And so it's still your real body. It's just fixed. And you come back, and then they do the next thing. And they'll, the next thing, the list, I'm dreading talking about this. I'm sorry.
No,
the list includes, I was a 4-year-old tiny child, and I was raped and sodomized repeatedly by adult men. And when that stopped working, I was nailed inside a wall and left to suffocate. I was tossed inside what looked like maybe an old bank vault and left to starve to death. I was shot with a gun. They played a daisy game where that they would pull out the petals. Love me not. And if it came up, love me not, they'd shoot you. Mm. So you got to go through the torture of what was it going to start off with. You know, what were you going to be shot or were you going to be spared that time? Then they had drugs that they would use, and this was the time frame when the CIA had discovered LSD.
Okay.
And I don't remember this particular one, but I've heard it from other veterans where that they drug you and then tape both of your eyes wide open and they show a different movie in each eye, and one's horror and one's comedy, and they'll switch them back and forth. Mm-hmm. And that's a technique to split your mind. The whole process takes about a year. So you learn a couple of things. You learn that you're not going to get out of there. You're completely helpless. You're at their mercy, and they have no mercy. And you learn that death is not an option. And if you have any psi abilities like going interdimensional, you find them real quick.
Mm-hmm. And is that the point of this?
That's part of the point of it.
Besides that they enjoy doing it somehow, or is there a?
They're trying to create mind fractures that they can program to be different people in the same body with no shared memory, so that they can program that asset, that alter, to be an assassin,
whatever they want, right?
Whatever they want. And the different alters can have different genders, speak different languages, have completely different skill sets, different religions. Some of them are programmed to be Muslims. Some of them are programmed to be ultra Christians. I know my cover alter, the person who has lived this life, was initially programmed to be ultra Christian. And when the memories came back, all of that just dropped away. It was like, my partner says it was like someone just flipped a switch and it was gone. So this is what they do to, I was 4. A lot of the people that I work with on Facebook, I understand that they're waiting until the kids are closer to 8 or 9 before they take them. They find more of them survive that way.
And if I'm getting this right for my listeners here, there's a question that they take them, let's say at 8 or 9, make their alters, do what they need to do with them, then put them back, and there's only a 15-minute loss of time. Is that in a nutshell, or?
They usually do your first service in this first initial thing. So you're gone from 12 to 60 years before you're brought back to that initial 15-minute window. I was gone 55 years.
Oh my God.
So I spent 5 years at Langley. The first year was my mind fracture. Then they took me to Montauk for about 6 months and tested me through the chair. And they found out that I went interdimensional instead of through time, because the chair responds to your own psychic abilities.
Is that like a jump seat? Is that what you're talking about, or is that something different?
It's one of the chairs that was out of the Roswell crash.
Wow.
And they had it hooked up to a computer, and they had built a wormhole that they could open. And they wanted it to go through time, because when you're sitting there, you could see the target that they were wanting you to go to. But when it turned on, the sides would form loops that moved, and they would reach for you. And if you got distracted, you would end up somewhere wherever the loop took you, which might be way different from what they wanted you to do. Or if your abilities included interdimensionality like mine did, I was deliberately running away.
Yeah, I would if I could, right? That makes
Exactly.
sense.
Exactly. I was at that point 5 or 6 years old, and I wanted as far away from these monsters as I could get. And by the way, these particular monsters were humans. I never encountered an ET in this whole time who was mean to me. The only beings that were mean to me were the humans. In fact, at Montauk, the humans got fed up with me and wanted to execute me, put me in the incinerator where they put the kids that came back catatonic. And there was a Draco, one of the warrior class ones. He was brown and very broad, and about 12 feet tall. They're shorter than the alphas. And he had been sitting there, and I don't know how long, because I don't react to them. And he got up and he told them, "No, you're not going to kill her. She's more valuable than the others because she can go interdimensional. I will just chip her. And when she runs away, I'll go get her." And that's what he did. So even though he kept me in the program, he saved my life.
Yeah.
He's why I'm here today to tell the tale. And so I have a different view of the reptilians than a lot of your listeners do. My experience with them is they're very strict, they're very domineering, but they value loyalty and they value honor. And if you give them loyalty and respect their honor, they will treat you well. If you are disloyal, they will crush you. So, and the Germans have been allied with them long enough that all of Earth may be stuck with them now. So this is important information. A rebellion will get us all killed. So working with them will not. So that's really important information. And as far as I know, there is no real rebellion out there. Whoever's been, well, I'm not going to name names. We all know who's out there saying that, and it's not true.
Okay.
A rebellion inside the German fleet is physically impossible. We're all chipped. Where if we think out of the box, we're given an epileptic seizure, and if it's too far outside the box, like rebellion, we would be killed on the spot. So it's impossible.
I'm going to ask you kind of an out there question, though, but it just came to my mind, so I'm just going to go for it. Is there a group of beings that are outside this realm, shall we say, that can help break this all apart as well? Is there besides? Yes. Okay. All right.
They are called the Council of Five.
They are not called the Council of Five.
They are called the Council of Five.
Okay.
And they have a military that humans call the Guardians.
The Guardians. Wow.
There really are guardians.
Mm.
And even the Draco fear them.
Mm.
And the Earth Council has been protecting humanity from everything out there. We were considered a child race. And it's only the negative ones out there that have abused the CE5 system to come in.
And what's the CE5 system to our listeners?
It's the current fad of going out and making contact with ETs that you don't know who they are or where they're from.
Mm-hmm.
It's so you can go see the pretty UFOs in the sky and make contact. And you have no idea who you're talking to. And there are far worse things out there than the Draco.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally think that CE5 should be limited to you know who you are making contact with and they are acceptable.
That would make sense. But how do you do that? How does one do that?
There are about 70 races that are authorized by various Earth governments to be on Earth, and about half of them are positive.
Mm-hmm.
All of 3D, including the extraterrestrials, are in duality.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like humans. They have about 10 to 15% are as bad as they can be. About 10 to 15% are good all the time, and the rest float by who they're around.
Mm-hmm.
You know, peer pressure. That being said, each race has an agenda. And you'd best know what that agenda is before you interact with those beings.
And that is just self-serve first and foremost, I would think.
It's all about what is in their interests.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't address them as used car salesmen at the best and possible invaders at the worst,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to bring a lot of trouble in on yourself and the rest of us.
Is that kind of what you think happened with our government from the beginning, like from the 50s, or is that off topic a little? Probably.
I think that's what happened with the Germans. They started doing seances in the 1800s, and their more occult groups made contact with the Draco and with Aldebaran and with a couple of other groups. The other groups were more positive service to others, but they weren't willing to give help with tech.
Mm-hmm.
So because the Council of Five had said we weren't ready.
Yeah, and that we have to be spiritually awake and aware, and maybe peace on the planet first, and able to join.
We have to be a galactic level 0 civilization before we're considered adult. And one of the big things about being a galactic level 0 is that we take care of each and every individual on the planet. And we're letting half of our population starve.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just left LA, 110,000 homeless.
Yeah. Well, I live in California, so I live in a small county in Central California, and we're rural. We're just north of Yosemite, and we have about 50,000 population and 5,000 homeless.
Oh.
But at least we have resources for our homeless.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't round them up automatically unless they're starting fires.
Mm-hmm.
We have We have homeless shelters for as many of them as we can get in. And we have BLM land where they're allowed to camp as long as they don't set the forest on fire.
Mm-hmm.
So they know what the rules are, and if they follow them, the police don't bother them. There's a couple of individuals who have extensive land holdings that also have settlements that they allow the homeless to come into and will barter for rent.
So we have to come up with some solutions, and it's within us to do that.
Well, housing, clothing, food, basic medication, medical care. Those are what we have to do to come up to a galactic level 0 civilization. And until we do, we're considered untouchable. Mm-hmm. And those races that are ignoring the rules, I've had contact with the Council of Five, and my understanding is the hammer is about to fall on them.
And how do you think that would come down, Penny?
Well, the first thing is any of them that have the agenda of covert invasion are going to be taken off the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not by the governments. This is by the Council of Five and the Guardians.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have things looking like battles in the sky with no humans involved. I do know that the Guardians are pushing our colonies in space back to the solar system. They're trying to put humanity back in the playpen. Will be allowed off-world, but it will be in our solar system or in the Sirius system, because our star is really Sirius D. It's the fourth star in the Sirius system.
I have not heard that before.
I'm a navigator in space. I have star charts in my head.
I'm glad we get to bring all that forward. You know, you went through things that it's unspeakable. And with this, you get to come out and be a leader, a reluctant leader nonetheless, but you're here to talk about these experiences and in a way, educate us and then give us hope and inspiration and then action for us to take, not just be spectators in all of this.
Well, I didn't come forward to make money or be famous.
Yeah.
I was quietly an admin on a group on Facebook, and I'm not even the founder. Tomas Alvin is the founder. But I was one of the first 10 people he added. In fact, I think I was the first one he added after himself. Mm-hmm. And we had set this group up to be group therapy for people with memories. Mm-hmm. And I was quietly doing that. I wasn't drawing any attention to myself. I was just helping people with their memories. Mm-hmm. Because I remembered more than most people did, so I was helping the others.
Mm-hmm.
And
serving humanity.
Yeah. And I got shot 3 times in 6 weeks with directed energy weapons.
Mm.
And my partner and I had a couple of long talks about, it looks like they're really going to kill me. And what my options were. And I was in this group on Facebook. It's called Decoders of Truth. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot on the conservative side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but they're open to out there. And one day I was looking at what they were posting, and I was like, oh my God, they can't really believe this. And so I started telling them what I knew. Mm-hmm. And I think that thread ended up with 800 questions that I answered.
Wow. And
by the end of the thread, the founder of that group, that's Jay Campbell, he's doing interviews on YouTube, has been ever since. I was on dot 11. The 11th interview he did was me. Oh. And at the end of that 800 question thread, he sent me a message on Facebook and said, "You're going to be on my show Thursday." I'm like, okay. So my partner and I talked about it and said, well, that may be the answer, to just go public and just say everything I know.
Mm-hmm. While you can, right? While you can.
Well, I can. So that, number one, if they do kill me, what I know is out there.
Yeah.
And number two, if they kill me, it verifies I was speaking the truth.
Yeah.
And so I have been just, as I remember more, I've been just saying it. I've been shot 7 more times.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
They figured out that for some reason they're not able to kill me, and so they killed the agent who activated my memory and his best friend, who was also an agent.
A visiting Syrian diplomat reported today that their population is evolving rapidly and advancing into a fifth dimensional consciousness.
If I care about a person,
they are seeking peace with all cosmic cultures, which may mean that the Earth will be asked to join the prestigious Galactic Federation of Light Alliances. Please join Debbie West and Michael Hathaway on Lost Knowledge, Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio A, for the latest breaking news on the Star Visitors' peaceful contact and the ongoing project of cleansing the Earth.
Their experiences, because by talking about this, it can
I am the architect.
Open up some experiences
I created
for
the Matrix.
Or
I've been waiting for you. Why am I here? You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincere efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision, which has led you inexorably here. You haven't answered my question. The Matrix is older than you know, as you are undoubtedly gathering. The anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equation. Choice. The problem is choice.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Be here Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Private Eye Matrix Revealed with Monique Lassard.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically atomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday at 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free, but there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Collision Course is back. Schedule will be on Revolution Radio every Saturday night, 6 to 8 p.m. We get outer space. We get honest answers, real researchers, truthful answers, and a place to engage with questions. Take part in the discussion. Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com hosts Collision Course every Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
This is your host, Barbara Jean Lindsey. Welcome back to the Cosmic Oracle Show. We are coming to you live from California. And we have with us this evening, we have Penny Bradley. If you missed the first hour, it's really enlightening of Penny's experiences of being kidnapped in 1959 and taken from her bed to Langley, and her mind being fractured and weaponized for her psi abilities. And we've been talking about her personal experiences and her continued relationship with herself through all of these alters, and then with, I would say, the captors themselves coming from the German Secret Service. Would that be correct, Penny? Come on in.
My biggest issues have been with the CIA.
Okay, that's good to know. Let's make it just honest, direct, to the point. That's what I love about you. So, all right. And so,
by the way, the CIA is supposedly responsible to Congress. But the last time that the Senate tried to rein them in was in the 1970s. Theoretically, the Senate of the United States government could rein these people in and put a stop to this shit.
Okay, so how can we help make that happen? What do we do? What can we do?
What we can do without getting ourselves killed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important.
It is.
Is we can put pressure on our Congress critters. Now, that's both in the House, so that would be your representative, and both of the senators from your state, and tell them you want the child kidnapping by the CIA investigated. You talk about the space stuff, and it'll go into the circular file.
Okay.
You call it what it is, child kidnapping, because it's an entire continuum.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids are used for adrenochrome. They're used for spare organs. They're used for sex slaves. They're used as slaves in space. They're used to create cyborgs that are sold to ETs. And they're used as the folks that man the space program. So there's millions of us.
Mm-hmm. And there's more waking up every day.
Yeah, I don't know why we're remembering, but lots of us are starting to remember. And I'm glad because, when Michael Ralph came out, he had nobody. He found a lady that was a shrink that was willing to do regression hypnosis on him, and that's how he was able to justify his testimony. And he was all alone for a long time, and so it started with Michael Ralph, and I think that was in the 80s.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What time frame was that?
He was in the war on Mars, mm-hmm. And the Mars War started in about 1960 and lasted till 1990. And I served in that, and so did Michael Ralph, and so did Randy Kramer, and so did Tony Rodriguez, and the new guy, Jason Rice, served. No, he came after that. He came after the war. Who else served in it? Those are the ones that I can remember off the top of my head. So I'm not the Lone Ranger by any means. I was the first one public from serving in the actual German fleet, which, by the way, they call themselves Nachtwaffen. It means night or space weapon. So nobody up there calls them Dark Fleet except Solar Warden. Mm-hmm. So Nachtwaffen runs the show, and their top officer ranks are SS, which means Schwarze Sonne, or Black Sun, and it's a religious cult among them where they drink black goo in their initiation. So the high officers are very cold-blooded and logical and calculating because of the black goo.
Wow, that's just so intense. Just to hear you say it, I have to tell you, I know that we have a lot of people on this particular show that are first time hearing anything like this. So we have a lot of beginners or new people here.
You have a lot of people that are going to be completely freaked out by what I have to say. Yes. I'm sorry, but there's no way to soften it up without eliminating the motive for fixing it.
Yeah. No, it's important to talk about it. And I want to thank you for having the courage to bring this. So once we can get something like get an attorney to write something like this up for us for the Senate to hear about child kidnapping from the CIA to stop it, or just write personal letters? You're saying personal letters to our representatives or our senators in our states.
I would write personal letters, because my understanding is that they have stopped even looking at the ones that are mass produced online.
Okay.
That they've had as many as 2 or 3 million letters that they've just tossed them because they were all duplicates. They consider those to be spam.
Okay.
So it needs to be a personal message, whether it's an email or a letter or a card or a phone call. It needs to be a personal message.
Okay.
And not just once. So there has to be pressure put on them to form a new church commission. That's what the first one was called, was after Senator Church. It was the Church Commission. It needs to be renewed.
Okay.
And applied instead of just MK Ultra, but to the entire kidnapping problem.
Okay. All right.
Because if they stop kidnapping, they'll have to go with consenting adults.
And I don't think they would have too many people line up for that.
Well, if they cleaned it up, they might.
Yeah.
People now are not terrified of ETs like they were in the past.
That's true. That's true.
And, I mean, the War of the Worlds, people killed themselves. And now it's like with Star Trek and Star Wars, we're kind of accustomed to the idea that there really are physical beings out there. And that's another misconception I find talking about this, is everybody thinks, oh, they're demons. They're not. They're physical beings just like we are. They die when you shoot them.
And they have souls.
And they have souls. All of them except the robots. And you would be surprised how many of the robots contain a biological being that has a soul.
Huh.
Because it requires a consciousness to operate the tech.
That's what I was just going to say. There has to be some consciousness. And with consciousness is awareness.
And it comes from a biological source.
Mm-hmm. An organic source.
That's
interesting.
So I hear a lot of people saying that clones are soulless too, and that's also full of shit. Clones are no different from identical twins, except they're grown in a tube and they're not given time for their minds to develop. That's it. That's the only difference. They make the body an adult in a month, and the mind has no way to keep up. So when they transfer one of my alters into one of my clones, that alter is possessing another human being. And they're doing it because they want deniability, not because it's necessary.
And the reasons why they would put your consciousness, let's say, because you've been trained, right, into a different...
I've been modified and I've been trained. And it's expensive to do all that. But they've already got the physical DNA modification in my clone. They just don't want to spend the 20 years raising it and training it. They want it now.
5 o'clock.
Yeah. So, and apparently my alters are what I do.
Yeah. And so can you talk a little bit about the alters? But before we go there, if there's someone, I'm sure there are, who's listening to this now and will listen to it in the future, if something's stimulated in them and where they start to have some dreams, it can come that way, or just how would it come to them? Let's start with that. That they might have some alters or have had these experiences.
It comes with your subconscious remembers it all, and from every altar, and wants to put the pieces back together. And most people, that happens by the memories will bubble up as recurring dreams. The details might be a little different from time to time, but the theme of the dream will be the same. And it will be so realistic that you'll wake up wondering, was that a dream or was that real? And it will feel like it wasn't symbols. Dreams are usually full of symbols, and you're usually the only one that can figure them out. But whenever you start having these dreams, my dreams, when before the memories were activated, my memory of being nailed inside the wall came up in a dream of a little blonde girl crawling through the walls and coming out in a cabinet. And I had that recurring dream for decades before I knew what it was.
Mm-hmm. And I remember also listening to a few of your other YouTubes, and there was one about having dreams of German dreams. Is that?
Yeah, German language dreams, ETs. And if you've served with the German fleet or with Kruger or Monarch, you've served in a lot of different off-world places. So those ETs could look like anything. For me, they were raptors, and they were Mars raptors.
Can you describe that for the people, Penny? Do you mind?
Okay, we were at war on Mars with the raptors and the Mars mantids. So these were my actual enemies for 25 years. Mm. And the raptors are about from 7 to 9 feet tall, and they look like a velociraptor from Jurassic Park, except they have human arms. And in battle, they didn't wear a lot of clothing. At least not the ones I fought. They didn't. Those particular ones didn't like clothing because it chafed their scales. And the ones that did wear clothing, it was really finely milled. It was like silk, nice stuff. I do not know where they got the fabrics. I do not know what they had in their culture that they could produce this stuff. But they had some really, really nice clothing. So did the Mars native humans. And when the Germans got to Mars, there were raptors. There were humans that looked like Apaches but dressed like Hindus. And there were a form of mantid that I remember them. Their faces were more like grasshoppers than mantis, but they weren't the normal mantids that are out in space either. They were another insectoid race. And so those were native to Mars. Mm-hmm. And there were also Draco. They had a base there, and they had brought Zetas with them. And I'm not sure which planet in the Zeta Reticuli system that they came from. There are several.
And you served with the German crew at that time?
I served my first 25 years that I was on Mars, when I left Langley, they sent me to Mars. And at that time, we only had one base on Mars that was humans. And it's now called Ares Prime, or in German, Ares Prima. And it was a base with a colony building around it. And I was never in the civilian part, so I have no idea what it was like.
Mm-hmm. And what were we doing there? What was the purpose of that?
At first, I was put in school with the colony kids. Mm-hmm. They educated their people. Mm-hmm. So I was sent to school for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And then I was put in a fighter plane, and I served in a unit that they called the Valkyries, or in German, Valkyren. And I was a second lieutenant, and I was air support for the ground thumpers. And most of the time, my job was actually recovering human parts, human remains, and putting them into regeneration tanks to see if we could recover our people. So I had ghoul duty most of the time. And when there was an actual battle that required air support, I was one of the people they would call in. So I didn't really have an assigned base. I just traveled, and the ship's computer would scan the ground, and when it picked up human remains, it would mark it, and I would have to go land the plane and get out and pick up the body and bring it home.
And be neutral to all of that.
Yeah, and be totally disassociated from it. Mm-hmm. A lot of the remains that we got were the Mars native humans, because their DNA was indistinguishable from ours.
That's interesting.
So at some point in the past, they were us.
Yeah, that seems logical.
There's a raptor group on Earth that is DNA indistinguishable from the ones on Mars. So at one point, the two planets were basically twins. And then there was a war. There's evidence in the isotope signatures in the atmosphere that there was once a nuclear war.
And from what you know, is that war still continuing today? And has it been a war that's continued through our history?
The nuclear war or the Mars war?
The Mars war.
The Mars war was because where the Draco had territory for us to settle in, it wasn't suitable. There wasn't water. It just wasn't suitable. You had to be underground because of the sandstorms on Mars, because it would fry the electronics. And where they put us, it was too small for growth, and it was too limiting. And it was too close to the surface, so we were getting interference from the sandstorms. Mm-hmm. And so they found a place they'd rather be, but it was occupied by raptors and mantids. So they used neutron bombs to kill the biologicals and leave the site. We had to wait 6 months, and we could just move in. And they had absolutely no compassion for those beings whatsoever. Those are intelligent. They're smarter than humans. Both races are. And They're intelligent. They have been spacefaring races in the past. They are cultured. They are spiritual beings, and we just killed them like they were bugs.
Wow. I have a question.
We started that war.
Wow, thank you for that, Penny. And we have a question from one of our listeners, from Don, and he asked, Penny, do you have any recalls of ground combat on Mars? And did you ever run into the telepathic spiders?
I've talked about the spiders before, yeah. Yes, when I would get down on the ground to pick up bodies, or occasionally I would be assigned to pick up a mantid for questioning. And the mantids on Mars keep Mars spiders like humans do dogs, and they interact telepathically. And so I would be chasing a spider. Well, I would be chasing a mantid, and it would duck into a cave, and there would invariably be a spider waiting for me.
How large are those spiders when we're talking spiders?
We're talking they can get as big as 15 feet across. We're talking some monster-sized critters.
Wow.
And they come in white and black and brown and tan and variations, and sometimes they're spotted and sometimes they're not. They look more like coconut crabs on Earth rather than thin-legged spiders. And they have 2 sets of mandibles. And their venom it burns like fire, but it kills you fast. Where Earth spiders, it takes a while to kill you. The ones on Mars, it doesn't. And I had a chip behind my left ear that connected me to the ship's computer for my plane. And so they would be able to track me and come bring me back. And I'd wake up in the regeneration tank. There are 2 types of people in the space programs. One is people in their natural body. People in their natural body can be put in the regeneration tanks. Then there are the people who are in clone bodies. And those people cannot be put into the regeneration tank because it will bring back the original mind of the body instead of the alter that's possessing it.
That's interesting.
So there are 2 types of healing technologies out there. One is for natural bodies, and the other one is for alters in clones.
What does that look like?
It's more like the hollow beds, and I mean that like holographic technology. The hollow beds that Randy Kramer and Ileana the Star Traveler talk about. In Nachtwaffen, they prefer people in their natural bodies, and they use the regeneration. They prefer the regeneration tanks, where the others, because the gel in the regeneration tank is made from black goo, that they remove the sentience, so it's no longer self-aware, but it's still a nanite technology. And so the other groups out there don't trust it because it's formed from black goo. So the Germans prefer it because it does a better job.
Are there any side effects? Let's say if you think you might have been put in one and come back to this dimension, and would there be any effects that you might notice from that? Or
The only effects that I've really noticed are from the age regression that they send you home. When they send you home, the age regression and time travel, the combination somewhere in that technology, about 20 years after you come back, you get sick as hell. The doctors don't know what to do about it. It takes a form very similar to fibromyalgia. In fact, in the group on Facebook, we have about 3,400 members, and when we asked them, about 30% of them had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and it's only 5% of the normal population. So, and along with that, you get arthritis and endocrine issues. So you end up, it's almost like time is getting vengeance, thinking you've cheated it because you've had this whole other lifetime and then you're back.
And to deal with it, to deal with this whole other part of you, it's like shocking.
So on my Earth person that everybody sees, I've been on disability for 10 years for spinal injuries and fibromyalgia, and I'm in full endocrine shutdown now. I take replacement meds for thyroid, adrenal, and I'm now diabetic. So all of that hit. Well, the diabetes is since 2016, but the rest of it hit in 1994 together, and I nearly died before I got my doctor to take it seriously. But I've been on replacement meds since 1994, and he's looking at me, my doctor. He's been treating me since 92. And he said, there have been 4 times that I thought you were going to die, and I was sure you were going to die, and I was ready to start palliative care and ease you out, and you would suddenly get better. You'd never quite get well, but you'd get better. And I have no idea why. And I just sat there with my jaw dropped open and said, "You were going to give up on me?" And he just, at that point, he turned red, because, he was going to give up on me.
Wow.
But, I'm still here. I still make sense when I talk, even if I'm out there.
No, it's the truth is the truth is the truth, and thanks for acknowledging that truth today and having the courage to talk about it with all of our listeners today. And if they are to get a hold of you, what's the best place to get a hold of you and your Facebook page? And let's do that so people can, and you're willing to have conversation with them. Where's the best place for them to contact you, Penny?
I made what my friends are calling a fan page.
Yay!
Oh God, I hate that term because these are real people with real problems. They're not a pain. But my friends are calling it that because I did not want to have 5,000 friends on my Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm at 1,700, and that's plenty.
Yeah.
So it's called Penny Bradley, Nachtwaffen Pilot.
What? Hey, wait a minute. How do you spell that? Penny, PENNY BRADLEY, comma.
Nachtwaffen is 2 words.
Okay.
NACHT. Nacht. Waffen is WAFFEN, and then pilot.
pilot.
It doesn't have my picture, but it has art of a space pilot that if the artist didn't know me there, they got damn close. The only difference is they show brown eyes in the art and mine are blue-green. And I do answer messages there. So I figured that was the best way to approach it. Now, to join our group, it's a secret group. So you have to be friends with somebody to be added. You can't find it at all on search even. And we did that because we've been in business for 2.5 years, and we had an admin go batshit every 6 weeks for the first year. And the last one of that set decided that he was going to take us to court and shut us down. And so we went secret so he couldn't find us. And Facebook wouldn't ever let us go back to being just closed. So, so the best way to get in there is to contact me. And that's how I've gotten the last 500 friends, is people wanting in the group that had to be added. So.
Well, I just posted that on our Facebook page here so that people can contact you, because I think it's important that we keep people a safe place for them to tell their stories, or to start talking about their stories and connecting the dots and connecting with each other.
I did have a website forum and a hacker decided we didn't need it anymore and hacked the entire server. So until we get that back, it's kind of a moot proposition.
Okay, but for now they can reach you and you will connect with them and can talk with other people who are having these similar experiences.
They might have to wait a day or two. Like when I was at Stargate with you, I was locked out of Facebook the whole time because I wasn't at home. So, if it happens that I'm out of town and Facebook locks me out, well, you have to wait till I get back.
Well, just keep trying. Don't let go. Don't let go.
Exactly. Don't give up.
Yeah, and they can reach me, and I would make sure they get to you too. Okay,
okay. I may add you to the group, just if you're not already, just so that if they contact you, you can put them in.
Of course. Where we go together here, Penny.
Absolutely. We have a lot of people who come and freak out and leave.
They have to go back and digest it, right? And then come back again.
Well, the group is people come in and expect it to be a 101 course, and it's not. We're kind of a 301 course. So it's not beginner stuff.
But that's the way you can just jump in, and after a while you'll acclimate.
Well, we have files and we have videos and we have books we've stolen, and some of them are no longer in print, is why we stole them.
Wow.
And we've tried to put together resource materials where people can research their own stuff and at least feel comfortable that this is real, that we're not just making it up and forcing some pretend world on them, because we're not. We admins, Tony Rodriguez is an admin, and Ileana the Star Traveler is an admin, and Sean Bond, he's a healer that's well known in the community. He's an admin, and Tomas Alvin is an admin. He's a CGI artist who spends a lot of time creating sets of CGI art that share his memories. I used some of his art in my presentations with his permission. And he's the founder. And except for the others are not public, so I can't name them. But we've got people from different branches of the programs out there that are in there, and we have agreed between us that it's not ethical to tell you what you remember.
Oh yeah, I agree. I'm with you on that.
We're not going to tell you what you're remembering. We're not going to tell you whether it was positive or negative. We're not going to tell you. We're not going to change your memories for you. We're going to be there and hold your hand while you remember for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And
we do have this. We have 2.5 years of thread of people sharing their memories. If you want to research, you just put in a search term,
mm-hmm.
and you can read what other people have remembered, which is what I used. My workshop on mapping the secret space program was based on what people had said in this group, and I gave them the credit for it when I did the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
This was the joint memories of 3,400 people. So that was the best I could come up with from what everybody had said.
And that's keeping it real and raw.
Yeah, it is. And there's more stuff out there because there are tons of CIA programs that are so encoded that it would take years of hunting through their archives to find them all.
Mm.
So the one I did on the mind control part, that was completely research based on declassified CIA documents. So there's a lot of research in this to figure out what you're remembering. There's a lot of work involved because you have to get past that initial horror of the memories to go, okay, this is bad, but what is it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The one thing that we share is we disassociate. So you don't want to live there. But when you're dealing with horrific memories, it's a good skill to have if you're trying to figure out what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And we've found whole new branches of the space programs through people that we refused to tell them what they were remembering.
And I just want to ask a question with the remembering. How do you feel about regression? People having regression, or let's talk about that briefly.
I've had 3 regressions. You still there?
Yes, I am.
I've had 3 regressions. I had one in January of 2015 with someone who was trained by Dolores Cannon, and she's no longer in business, so giving out her name is kind of
mm-hmm.
invading her privacy at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I had that recorded. I had one in about April of 2017 with James Rink.
Mm.
And we hit suicide programming. and he got me out of that without danger.
Wow.
So I would recommend him. He's really very good.
Okay.
And then I had one the day before Stargate with Reverend Gregory Kovacs.
Oh.
And in fact, why he came was because I needed it so badly, and we've been friends for years.
Oh, I was able to hang out with him for a while. Him and his beautiful, lovely wife.
They're just wonderful people, and
They really are.
They were the ones that when it was too late to eat at the hotel, they would take me out somewhere where I could eat because I'm diabetic and I would get sick. So it would be, come on, Penny, let's go take you and feed you. So they are awesome, and I give them my utmost recommendation if you need help right away. And all of these people followed a code of ethics where they don't change your memory.
Mm-hmm.
They protect you from the programming. But they don't change the memory. They don't change the polarity of the memory. That's important because we have people out there who think it's their God-given right to change negative memories to positive ones so you'll heal from it. Actually, that makes it a lot harder because you don't know what you're working with.
That makes sense.
You have to know what really happened before you can heal the pain from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I get really frustrated with those people who think that they're supposed to fix the memory rather than heal the harm from the memory. So I get to clean up some of those messes. That's why I have an opinion.
Well, we have just about a few minutes left. It's 6:47, and I'd love for you. We have like 10 minutes left, and I could go over a whole bunch of things, but I just, if there's something that you would really like to say to express maybe the last 10 minutes of the show to our listeners about what you think is important for them to hear.
I think it's important for people who have not been through this to understand all of us veterans have been mind fractured. We've been tortured. We were deliberately given 2,200 altars, and at least a third of those have been used as assets on Earth or in space. And we are trying to figure out who we are, what we've been used for, and how to regain our personal sovereignty. Mm-hmm. Judging us for what our altars have done under mind control is unfair and cruel. Judging us for what our altars, who our altars were owned by, is also unfair and cruel. When I first came public, I had people call me a Nazi, which is kind of amusing, ironic, because I had a Jewish grandmother. Yeah. So the Germans in space are not Nazis, by the way. They are Germans. They are Teutonic. They are arrogant as hell. They are domineering, but they're not Nazis. They figured out right away that anything on Earth was closer related to them than anything in space. So all of that Nazi, we as the master base stuff is gone. You only have to deal with that with Earth humans. Life on Earth is a lot more complicated than you think. And the Germans in Antarctica are in charge on Earth, too. Most of the stuff that you want to blame on reptilians or Anunnaki or other ETs, it's really because the Germans in Antarctica are at war with the Cabal. And a lot of the fallout is from that. And in space, the Germans consider themselves free Germans, and they mean free from the Cabal. Mm-hmm. And so there's that war going on. And there's a war in the higher dimensions around the Council of Five over the side that says humans are an engineered race and don't deserve Earth, and the side that says we de facto got it, give us a chance. And they're actually taking bets on who's going to be right.
Is that like the Inky and Lil Anunnaki still playing out, or is it totally different?
It's a higher level. Mm-hmm. The Inky, the Shahami are who we are calling Anunnaki, and that's the Enlil Anki thing. And they were still playing out. Most of their royals got executed by the Council of Five toward the end of August.
Wow.
They were given a set of changes that were supposed to happen on both Earth and Shahami, and they just basically said F you and got executed for their trouble. So having interaction with the Council of Five gives me lots of intel.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff playing out behind the scenes, and hopefully it will stay behind the scenes. And the culture has to change a lot, because the Council of Five is not going to allow any form of slavery ongoing. And that goes from mind control to actually owning another person to organized religions that are mind control to the Babylonian money debt system to patriarchy. And they don't intend to change it to matriarchy. They intend for partnership to be what comes out of it.
Mm.
And
or cash bases, or
I'm not sure what system they're aiming at, but they're aiming for something that's more in keeping with a galactic level 0 culture, where everybody is valued. Now, I know in space, the programs all have 0 point energy in one form or another. They all have what Star Trek called replicators that produce food and clothing. They all had some sort of medical device that could heal anything that we know on Earth and keep you young. So all of that, we have that technology. It's there. It's just pulling it out of the Black Ops and bringing it to Earth. Mm-hmm. You know, we have the ability to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So the Council of Five is not being unreasonable. We have the technology to do it. And now is the time.
Now's the time. And I have one quick question again. Is the adrenochrome traded by programs in the SSPS?
It's traded by the planetary corporations.
Okay, thanks.
In conjunction with the CIA. The CIA procures all of the assets who man all of these, and that gives them control over a lot of things that they shouldn't have. So taking them out of kidnapping the people to serve will take them out of a lot of things.
And that's part of the plan now?
That's what I'm asking people to contact Congress about.
Yep.
If we can stop the CIA from doing the kidnapping, we can clean up the atrocities on Earth and in space.
Okay.
That is the only chink in the armor that I have seen.
Okay, so you know what to do, listeners. Let's do it, okay?
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message. Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free, but there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Take a look around, kid. What do you see? Homes being foreclosed. People working 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table and still drowning in debt. Don't get me wrong. This country is founded on great ideals and principles. They've all been ruined by the banks. Open your eyes to the banks that are robbing you. You know who my favorite president was? Who? Thomas Jefferson. He saw all of this coming and tried to stop it. He fought the banks. JFK too, and they killed him for it. The banking institution is more dangerous than an army, he said. He also said that every generation needs a revolution, Jimmy. The American dream is just that. Just a dream. War is a continuation of politics. only by other means. Politics is a continuation of economics by other means. This is our bank. This